Hey everybody, welcome to Ad Victoriam. I'm Caleb, this is Zac.
Hey guys.
And we are reading, praying, journaling, and talking through our daily devotions to victory. I'm going to get us started off here. I was in Matthew chapter 8. I was kind of all over, as I usually am, but I kind of just, this stuck out to me. And I was thinking about it a lot, and this is obviously what I want to share with you. So it's the story of Jesus and the Centurion. And Centurion comes to him and says, my servant is sick. And Jesus asks him, shall I come and heal him? And he replies, I'm just going to read it because it's so good. Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. And when Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those who follow him, I haven't found faith like this in all of Israel. This is great faith. And then he basically goes on to say that the Gentiles will come into the kingdom of God too. And then what stood out to me was verse 13. It says, then Jesus said to the centurion, go, let it be done just as you believed it would. And his servant was healed at that moment. And this is probably one of my favorite stories in the Bible. I think this is such a cool moment between Jesus and a centurion who is a Gentile. And so I feel like the drama / stakes are raised because all of his followers up until this point are obviously all Israelites or Jews, and they are still dealing with we're God's chosen people. And now you're saying like, oh, the Gentiles can have faith. And who knows if the centurion, like what he knew of Jesus beforehand, but he knew obviously that Jesus was able to do something. And his response of, I'm not even worthy for you to come under my roof, it's so contrasted to how we see like the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the elders and the councils and even some of the other Israelites, because he treats him with such reverence immediately, even though he is a man of power, and he says right here, a man of authority, and is obviously sociopolitically above the Jews of the time, as his country is the one that's ruling them. Yet he comes to Jesus and is like, I'm not worthy for you to step foot in my house, but you just need to say the word. And that's why it's just one of my favorite stories, because it's like, that's how I want to approach Jesus, of not presuming anything, just belief that Jesus doesn't owe me anything, but he can do anything. And what I loved about this was today was that when Jesus says, go, let it be done just as you believed it would, I just felt a freedom to be able to approach Jesus with the dreams and the desires of my heart and the needs and the wants that I have, of being able to come to Jesus and saying, I believe that you can do it. And if you're willing, would you please do it? And I think what I was reflecting on today was that belief part of Jesus said, go, for what you believed has been done. And I don't know. It just got me thinking about like, what do I truly, truly believe that Jesus can do in my life? And what are the things that I do believe he can do that I need to approach him again in reverence and in supplication, I guess would be the big word for it, in prayer. That is like, Jesus, would you respond to me because I've seen you do it before here in Matthew chapter 8. So yeah, I was just thinking about a lot of my own dreams and promises that I feel like he's given me, and it was just really encouraging to read it today, and Jesus saying, let it be done according to how you believed. And I was like, God, give me more belief. So yeah, that's what I read.
That's good. I've never thought about, focusing on that phrase, just as you believed it would, because that means that not only did he have faith that he could do it, he had like an actual concrete picture of, and not just like, oh Lord, could you do something about it? Can you just make him feel a little bit better? It was like, can you heal him completely? I know you can't. Like, I'm confident you can, and would you be able to do that? And it's not a question of if he can do it in a capabilities question. It's a question of, will you do this by your like choice? He's like asking, like, I know you can do it. I'm just asking if you would. And I think that's a cool differentiation, because then it makes me think about with my own life, my own things, the own things I have faith for in God. Do I ask, Lord, you just do whatever you want to do? Or is it, Lord, I know what you can do. Will you do it? And I think that's like a cool differentiation that um, is like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just a cool different way. The other thing I wrote down is the only other person that immediately came to mind. I'm sure there's other people, but excuse me. The person that immediately came to mind was John the Baptist. And he says, there's one coming who I'm not even worthy to tie his sandals. And it's like, that's like just to tie someone's shoes. And he's like, I'm not even worthy to do that. How are you not worthy to tie someone's shoes? How elevated do they have? And like, I think that's the point, is he's like, it's extremely like, he's saying he's more than a man, he's more than just another person. And that's, I don't know, I just thought that connection of like, he's the only other person that I can think of that immediately came to mind who is just like, I am not worthy. Because a lot of other people that get healed or approach Jesus, they sometimes say, I'm not worthy, but most of the time it's like, Lord, just have mercy on me. And then, like you said, the Pharisees are the ones who invite him in the house, but do like, but there's like debate over who gets to sit next to Jesus, as in saying, we're worthy enough to be up next to you. It's like, you're at our house, Jesus, like pretty sweet, huh? And the just totally different mindset of, and I think, I mean, we've talked about humility so many times, but I think that's exactly humble yet faith with the centurion is such a cool um, piece to be at. And I think the other interesting thing that I'm just off the top of my head is like, he looked at Jesus from his mindset, understanding how structure, hierarchy, rules, and all of that goes through. And interestingly enough, that has always been an issue with Israel, is like following the Lord's leadership. There's a lot of rebellion, and not to say that Rome has its plentiful share of rebellion, backstabbing, mutiny, people assassinating, Caesars and whatever. But in like his, he's saying, but this is how, if someone follows rules, this is how it's done. You just have to say it. And it makes me think about how we live in modern times, yet also kind of disregard the Lord's power in a way that's like, Lord, if you need to like do something, you can do it, whether it's on the internet, whether it requires computer power, right? It requires a modern machine like a computer or a car. And yet I feel like there's sometimes it feels almost like ingenuine because those are such modern things. Yet on the other hand, I'm like, maybe not. Maybe you just say, Lord, in the same way you can just heal something like that, you could use a doctor, a surgery, a car, a computer, a phone, a text, a video chat. Like, does the Holy Spirit move through Spotify recorded worship? That's a weird thing to think about, but who's to say he can't? It's like, who's to say he's, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of times when you look at that stuff and then you look at our modern times, it's like, we don't really have like, I don't follow orders in that way. I don't have a perfect understanding of, we live in a democracy, and it's like, there's no Caesar over us that's like, says it, done. No one can do anything about it. And yet, maybe we do, like, and I'm like, I think I need to have that understanding of God. And it's like, if he says it, it's done. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't have experience in that way of it, just no questions asked, no one can stop it. And that's where the centurion's like, and that's how proper hierarchy works, is you just say it and it's done. And no matter what, and I think that's, anyways, yeah, those are just my immediate.
That's good. That reminds me of how I got to Matthew chapter 8. Was I actually started in Genesis 1, and I was contemplating on how God speaks, and then the world and the universe and all of these things are created. And I think the Holy Spirit just brought it to my mind of like, there's another point where I speak and things happen. And he just reminded me of the centurion man from the outside looking in, or outside looking at God or Jesus, and being like, yeah, by your very words, like, you don't even have to come. And that's something I've thought about in the past of Jesus is sitting on the throne. God dwells in an unapproachable light. They don't have to get up to accomplish anything. Like, I don't have to persuade them. They don't have to uh bother themselves with being like, like I'll just do it myself. It's just like that authority to say this is what needs to happen, and then that not only authority but power to make it happen is what I believe is that's the highest power that you can have, that you don't have to use actions to accomplish anything, but that your words can. And obviously we see that on earth as with kings of like the kings aren't the one that are going out and making the kingdom work. They're sitting on their throne and they're saying, do this, don't do that. And then it happens. And I think that is a sign of ultimate authority and power. And I think that's what the centurion is obviously communicating here is you don't even have to come. Like, you offered to come, but I know that you don't even have to. Like, I'm not even going to bother you enough to bring you from this place to my house. You just say the word and it's going to happen. And that, as you were talking too, I was just thinking about how in my own prayer life, I feel like that's the attitude excuse me, that's the attitude I need to take in my prayers, is that there is this element of asking, but it shouldn't be like desperate asking, like I need to do something in order for him to do it. It needs to be this, you hold supreme authority and power, and if you just say the word, it'll be done. And I think on the inverse of that, if something isn't done immediately, I know that he can do it immediately, so there must be a reason that he's not doing it immediately. And I can like take peace in that instead of being like, am I doing something wrong? Like all of this stuff. It's like, no, look for the response in the quote unquote no response, because I know that he can do it. So if he's not doing it right now, okay, how do I need to shift my perspective into my situation or my circumstance or whatever it is that I'm thinking about or praying about?
That's good. Yeah, because I think, I mean, how many times does Jesus say, when he empowers the disciples with authority, and he says, "A yes on earth is a yes in heaven. A bound on earth is bound in heaven," and vice versa. And I think that's just him saying, like, it's like now part of the authority and how it workflows. And yeah, that's good.
That brings up another thought of like the bound on earth as it is in heaven and unleashed is here we see it like instantly there's a healing as Jesus speaks it and he says go and it's done as how you believe. But that also made me think of in Daniel, where Daniel's praying and then the angel appears to him and says, I had to fight against the powers and principalities of this world to get to you. And that's interesting as well, because I think it's the same principle of sometimes God speaks and it happens immediately. And other times he speaks and sends servants to go and do the work. It's the same power, because in one it's like he's in exercising his unlimited power to change something in an instant. And in another instance, he's sending somebody else to do the work that he wants accomplished that somebody prayed for. And I think about, yeah, that angel saying like I had to fight to get here and that's why I was delayed, like sorry about that. He doesn't say sorry, but he's explaining to Daniel like this is why it took so long for me to get here. And I think about all the times somebody has I don't know if intervened is the right word, but somebody has shown up at the right time doing or saying the right thing. And I think that's another instance of like those times where someone sends me a text and is like, I've been praying for you today. It's like, oh, that's so encouraging. And maybe it didn't come right at the moment I was going through whatever I was going through. Maybe it happened later that day. But I feel like that's just another picture of God is still sitting on his throne. And then with a word, he sends his servants in the world. And so that's just another encouragement for me that it's like, if it's not happening yet, maybe God is accomplishing it in a different way than I had supposed it would happen. And I just have to wait for the angels to battle through the demons or for the person who's being sent to arrive, because it takes time to, like, I think of, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. You talked about this of Philip on in the Ethiopian man, where he says like go to this road and he doesn't tell him why. And how long was the Ethiopian man like reading the scroll and confused about it? And we see that he's like hoping that someone will come and explain it to him. It's like Philip had to get there at the right time, at the right place. And I think that's just another picture of how cool God's kingdom is yeah, there's a hierarchy, and sometimes his word passes through the hierarchy, and sometimes it just goes directly to the need.
That's good. Should I read what I got here?
Yeah.
Let's see. So I was reading Second Chronicles 13 and 14. And it starts off with Solomon's son Rehoboam is just absolutely annihilating the kingdom in the worst way possible. Terrible leadership. Jeroboam was picked as the next leader. He's doing a terrible job, and now they're in civil war. And so I just put down, like, it's wild how within one generation, the kingdom at its absolute peak is already in chaos, civil war, and at war with Egypt, and just people scattered. The worship of God is just gone, and worshiping other things. And yet it's encouraging because yet another generation later, Rehoboam's son, Abijah, he rallies the kingdom back to God, and they put their trust back in God, and they do a God commandment, and he literally confronts Jeroboam, and he's like, "We're standing with God. You're not living well. You're not following God. Your people are like, whoever wants to be a priest is a priest, and you're worshiping whatever." And yet, excuse me, Jeroboam like leads an ambush and like has him surrounded, and they like freak out, and they're like, "God, we need help." And it just, they have an absolute victory, and it says 500,000 of the Israel army died, and Judah, who was the ones praying to God, like, won. And I was like, 500,000 people is just, I can't even comprehend that many people, and that's the number of people lost in the battle. And I was just like, that's so cool how they just went back to God, and they're like, we're standing with God, we're standing with his commandments, and God like honored that, not just because they're like, we're going to do our own thing, but he like publicly was like, we're following God, what you're doing is wrong. And God backed him up on that like confrontation, because they're just like, we're standing with God, and the other guys are like, just kill him, you know. It's like, yes, the proper response of the wicked. And then his son, so now we're one more generation, and it's always like a coin toss of, are they going to follow the Lord or not? If you've read through Kings and Chronicles, you know that it just flip-flops all the time. But it says he followed God. And then this is the part I wanted to talk about that I thought was really interesting. It says, because he got rid of the idols, altars, told everyone to center their lives on God, follow God's commandments, the kingdom was at peace. And then specifically it says, God kept the peace. And I thought that was so cool because literally his then grandfather was battling against Egypt, because it says God sent Egypt, the king of Egypt, to make war on them, to punish them. And then they repented, and God's like, okay, I won't destroy you, but you will be under like their oppression. And so I was like, on one side, you're not following the Lord. You're under oppression from a king, not just a king who came, a king God sent to like oppress you and teach you a lesson. And yet when they are centering their lives on God, and leadership is telling everyone, follow the Lord, do his commandments, all this stuff, God kept the peace. And so I just put down, like, God can keep the peace in your own life, internally and externally, because when you center your lives on him, on Jesus, and I just put like, and clean house, like there's a two references here where it says that they go through and they just get rid of anything that leads anybody away from the Lord. And I was like, how do you do that in your own life of just like cleaning house? And I think there's sometimes it's like little tiny things, but I think for some people there are glaring things that's like, this is not helping you, this is not of God, and you just have to burn it down. Like, I don't know what like a better way to say it other than just like destroy it and get it out of your life in whatever way that looks like. And then, because then the turn of that is like, God keeps the peace. And I just think about like how many, not to just slap on this as an answer to like anxiety and depression and mental illness, and like all those things, but it's like, how is it possible for God, in the same way he can keep a kingdom at peace, keep your own life internally at peace. Well, just your own life at peace in stress, in decisions, in finances, in all the things that cause anxiety, and in relationships. It's like by centering yourself on God, it's not saying this brings peace. It's saying God kept the peace. And I think it does bring peace, but it's also not just a perfect equation of like, all you have to do is do this. And it's not like a self help thing like, just be more organized and you'll be less stressed. Yeah, but center your life on God and He will keep the peace in your life. And I was just like, oh, I want that. It makes it so easy to like feel like, oh, all I have to do is just follow the Lord. And then that's because that's something I want. I want peace in my life. And, um, but then there's a part of that too where he still cleared things out. And how many other times do we read about kings that don't clear stuff out? And it says they were good, but they didn't destroy these random idols and shrines and pagan worship and whatnot. And so there's always like this God did some things, but not everything because they didn't follow through. And here he follows through. And I didn't get all the way through, but in like the next chapter, there's another instance where God gives them like insane victory against. Oh, it's at the end of chapter 14. Ethiopians like attack with like 1,000,000 strong versus theirs, and they just absolutely obliterate the Ethiopians. And you're just like, that's just God giving favor in battle, which is just cool to see. Um, so yeah, I don't know. That's what I read is just like, just really encouraged by that of focusing, centering your life on God. And not only does it bring peace, God keeps the peace in your life is just kind of the equation I took of the kingdom, my personal kingdom, my house and family. So yeah, any thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
that's all good. It makes me think of Jesus saying of like, if your right hand causes you to sin, chop it off, lop her off. If it's your eye, same thing. And I think that is the agency that we have within our faith journey, is looking at the things that are and saying, is this helping me to serve the Lord, or is this leading me to sin against Him, or is this adding strife or anxiety to my life? And I think there are some things that we can absolutely cut off, and we don't need them. But we've tricked ourselves into believing we do need this. This is absolutely necessary. I think the children of Israel did that all of the time, where it's like, everybody else has this, why can't we have this? And yeah, that's just a trap. And then I think on the other end, I was thinking of when Paul says, like, be anxious for nothing and pray for everything. And I really do believe that you cannot pray enough. Like Paul says, pray unceasingly. And sometimes it's not, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but I'll just say it like this. It's not good enough to just pray about something daily. Maybe you should be praying about the things that weigh on your mind constantly, and not be so quick to abandon that and find alternative routes forward, of, like you were saying, of like the self-help route, because I think we can get tired in prayer. I know that I can, or it's like, man, I prayed for this so much and nothing seems to be changing. And I feel like what I've learned over the years is, doesn't matter. Pray again. Like whenever that crops up, just pray again. Center yourself on Christ, like you were saying. Go to His house, meet with His people, and allow that to signify Christ as Lord over your life. I think that's a big thing in these chapters and throughout the whole Old Testament, and especially in our lives as Christians and today, is we need to understand the lordship and the kingship to understand the blessings of the lordship and the kingship. And I think you're completely right. It's like God, we see multiple times throughout, again, the Old Testament, where they partially obey and God partially blesses. And I think the biggest one I'm thinking about is when they first go into the promised land. And some of the people are afraid, and some of the people are lazy, and some of the people don't trust God. And therefore, your land that was supposed to be completely free from oppression and the enemy is now riddled with those that would like to see you be destroyed. And I think for us as Christians, when we don't obey God, we leave things in our life that want to see us destroyed. That sounds dramatic, but yeah, it's a real thing, and I don't think that's you need to cut out everything that's not Christian, but I think you should be prayerful and self-aware enough to know these are the things that lead me down dark paths, or these are the paths that I take that I feel relatively safe, but sometimes an arrow sneaks its way through, and it's like, then it's not a safe path. Don't go that way. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
I think like when you think of like cleaning a mold is like what I think about a lot of times when it comes to like sin in my life. It's like cleaning a house. And if you don't treat the mold with the proper chemicals and get it all out, it just comes back. And you're just going to continually reduce it down to by 90%. But then the 10% just grows back again and again and again. And it's like you could just deal with that forever until the one time you forget to clean, and now it's taking over and causing big problems. And I think that's how a lot of people look at sin, as it's get down to a manageable level, and it's like, how about we just reduce it to 0 and then you're done with it? But that's like requires more effort, and you have to want to do it. And yeah, that's my thoughts.
Cool, good stuff. Anything else?
It's been 5 weeks.
It's been 5 weeks, episode 25. Thanks for listening. Subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you later.